It is my pleasure to welcome you to Black Queer Pride Winter Edition 2021. This is our second Black Queer Pride. The first one was launched in July of 2020. When we heard on July 4th weekend that there were Black queer party promoters throwing in-person gatherings during the height of this pandemic, we knew that we had to do something. So we leapt into action. We organized a 3-day virtual extravaganza that included performers and presenters and singers. It was really a phenomenal opportunity. Through that event, we put $6,000 into the hands of Black queer gig workers that have been disparately impacted by this pandemic. And now with Winter Edition, we are back and it is even better. We are so grateful to the AIDS Foundation of Chicago for their financial sponsorship of this event. They have 2 programs, Women's Connection and PrEP, that are doing phenomenal work in our community. And I hope that you will support them and that you will avail yourself of their programming and their resources because they are for our community. I'd like to share a little bit with you about who we are as a foundation and what we are called to do. We envision a Chicagoland in which all Black LGBTQ plus people are safe, liberated, healthy, whole, and well-resourced. We are a Black queer-led, multiracial social justice organization that advances justice for Black LGBTQ plus people across Chicagoland through empowerment, education, and entertainment. We invite non-Black accomplices, interfaith partners, and service providers to support community organizing that builds a more equitable LGBTQ plus community. Our 4 focus areas are the arts, community organizing, community mental health, and our signature 2021 racial justice campaign, the Black LGBTQ plus Equity Index. The arts. Our 2 principal artistic endeavors are Black Queer Pride Winter Edition, which will happen every January, and Black Queer Pride Summer Edition, which will now happen every July. In addition, though, to these 2 events, we also are doing Black Women Speaks, a monthly event during which Black queer women share stories of pain, trauma, beauty, and resiliency, all through poetry and artistic expression. And we have more events that are coming throughout 2021, so hold on. This is going to be an exciting ride. I want to talk for a moment about why we started. Our launch date was July of 2019, but this movement owes its origin to Stonewall because it was Black and brown trans women, Black youth who lived around Stonewall that rose up in 1969 to fight back police brutality, homophobia, transphobia, and all other kinds of exclusion. It is because of Marsha P. Johnson. It is because of Sylvia Rivera that there can be a Boys Town, that there can be a Castro, that there can be a Gayborhood. And so Lighthouse Foundation, Black queer folk have come more than 50 years after Stonewall to demand our part of the LGBTQ plus bed of opportunity. LGBTQ plus folks since Stonewall have made huge strides. Strides in rights, in employment opportunities, in access to generational wealth, but those rights have not been fairly and equitably distributed. Black queer folk have not seen the benefit and uplift that our white queer siblings have experienced. So now the heirs of Marsha P. Johnson, Black trans folk and Black queer women and Black queer men and Black gender non-conforming folk, we have come through Lighthouse Foundation to challenge the beneficiaries of Marsha P. Johnson's legacy, mainly white gay men. We have come to demand our share of the LGBTQ plus opportunity. It was our community that secured it in the first place, and it's time for our community to benefit from it. During the summer of 2019, there were a series of racist incidents that unfolded in Boys Town. There was Progress Bar, where the owner unilaterally decided to ban rap music. This was one of the few establishments at which black and brown queer folk felt comfortable assembling socially in Boys Town. Then there was Beatniks, a vintage clothing shop in Boys Town, where the white gay male owner made the decision to sell a Confederate flag vest when a black queer patron walked in and said, "I don't think that represents what this neighborhood is about." He was told to get it through his effing thick skull that this is his store and he can sell whatever the F he wants to sell. And then we learned about Officer Thomas Walsh, a Chicago Police Department officer with a wildly racist and white supremacist past. We found out that in 2015 he violently assaulted a black security guard while Walsh was off duty. And in 2015, COPA's predecessor, IPRA, the Independent Police Review Accountability Board, sustained 3 of the 4 allegations against Walsh, essentially finding him guilty of unjustifiably physically assaulting Matthews, finding him guilty of using the N-word repeatedly, and they found him guilty of bringing discredit upon the Chicago Police Department. You can imagine our shock, our sadness, and our disappointment when we realized that this individual was employed at the Center on Halsted. But I am excited to say that through the work of Lighthouse Foundation, through the hard work of racial equity that the Center on Halsted undertook under the leadership of Tico Valle, their CEO, and Angela Barnes, their board chair, together we solved a problem in 6 months that had festered for 6 years. Today, Walsh is no longer the head of security at Center on Halsted. That privilege belongs to Quantum Security, which is owned and operated by black queer women who are trained in de-escalation. I am so grateful for all of the work that we have done. I'm excited about relaying this origin story because I think we're superheroes in Lighthouse Foundation. I now want to invite Reverend Smash to talk more about Officer Walsh, how we secured that victory, and the lasting impact and improvements that have come from it.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for joining in today for Black Queer Pride and for hearing about what we have been up to at the Lighthouse Foundation this past year and what we're really looking forward to in the next year. My name is Rev Smash, and I am a CARE organizer. CARE stands for the Coalition of Accomplices for Racial Equity, and we organize non-Black folks to come alongside the work of the Lighthouse Foundation for Black queer justice and liberation. And I have been here in Chicago for just about a year and a half, and when I moved here, I was really taking some time to figure out where I wanted to get invested and involved. And I went to a meeting of the Lighthouse Foundation and knew pretty quickly that this is where I wanted to invest. And I knew that because of the way the Lighthouse Foundation is set up. The fact that there is a Black Queer Caucus that is calling the shots and deciding what needs to be worked on, and that we as non-Black accomplices can come alongside that work and show solidarity. And I also learned pretty quickly that Lighthouse Foundation is about it. Kind of when I was coming along was probably near the tail end of the work that Lighthouse was doing to get the racist police officer Thomas Walsh removed from his position at the Center on Halsted and removed from Halsted, Boys Town in general. And I think it was just over, or just maybe perhaps under a year ago, that he was removed from the center on Halstead, and they instead hired Quantum Security, which was really awesome to hear. Quantum Security is Black owned, and they really work on trauma-informed care and service, which is pretty amazing considering the damage that Thomas Walsh was doing in the neighborhood. So just in pretty much 6 months, Lighthouse was able to really eradicate a problem that was going on in the Boys Town / North Halstead neighborhood for over 6 years. So I knew pretty quickly that Lighthouse was about that life, that was Lighthouse was willing to do the work, to get uncomfortable, to hold people accountable, but also to engage with folks in a real meaningful and collaborative way. I'm excited that now we're trying to work together with the Center on Halstead and be partners going forward, even though we're targeting them a bit in the beginning and asking them to remove this racist police officer. So I'm really, really excited about the work that we're doing. I'm hopeful for this next year that we actually, fingers crossed, toes crossed, we can be together in person because just last year we're really starting to get together in CARE and to do some important training, some anti-racist training for white folks. And I really think we can carry that throughout this next year. So thanks so much, y'all, for being here. Thanks for being on this ride with us. And we look forward to everything we are going to do together in the future.
Thank you, Smash, our CARE lead organizer, for walking us through that journey to hold Officer Thomas Walsh Sr. accountable. I now want to talk about how we are structured and why we are structured that way. Lighthouse Foundation is made up of 2 branches. The Black Queer Caucus, which organizes internally for Black queer liberation and flourishing, and CARE, the Coalition of Accomplices for Racial Equity, which organizes externally for Black queer liberation and flourishing by holding accountable the LGBTQ plus institutions that serve Black queer folk across Chicagoland. It is the responsibility of the Black Queer Caucus to select 1 to 3 racial justice campaigns to undertake every year. And also they create programming that is for Black queer people by Black queer people, and also programming that is open to the general public. The Coalition of Accomplices for Racial Equity is made up of individuals and also member organizations. These are non-Black accomplices who have committed to fighting under the direction of Black queer folk for our mutual healing, flourishing, and betterment. I am so proud of the 15 member organizations that have made the decision to join Lighthouse Foundation. And a little bit later, I'm going to talk about those organizations and some of the blessings that they have brought to this community. CARE and the Black Queer Caucus work in union, internally and externally, to organize for a more equitable LGBTQ plus Chicagoland community. And I'm so proud of both branches. Carlin Meyer, our Leadership Council president, has prepared a greeting and also a summation of the year for you. Carlin's leadership is one of the principal reasons that this foundation has been so successful in 2019, 2020, and now into 2021. Carlin?
Happy 2021. I'm Lighthouse Foundation's board president, Carlin Meyer, and I want to thank you for attending Black Queer Pride Winter Edition. Whether you just kind of stopped in on Facebook to see what was going on, or you are with us for all 3 days of programming, thank you so much for your time and your attention, and for supporting such amazing Black queer creators and professionals and voices. If you attended Black Queer Pride Summer Edition as well, thank you for coming back. And I want to give a special heartfelt thank you for those who were with us in 2019 when we began as a foundation. For those of you who went that far back, you know that 2020 was in no way what any of us really anticipated, and especially for us as a foundation. We had really big plans for what we were going to do in 2020, and we were really mobilizing and gaining a lot of steam and support. And much like you did, I'm sure, in your professional and personal lives, we had to pivot, and we had to pivot dramatically and quickly. I'm still so proud, so profoundly proud of what we were able to accomplish in 2020, and so grateful for the support and increasing just respect and appreciation that we have gotten from the supporters of Lighthouse Foundation over this last very tumultuous year. I am so proud that we were able to, with your support and your donations and contributions, launch the Black Queer Mutual Aid Fund, which was able to help Black queer people in Chicagoland without any stigma or jumping through hoops. When people had told us that they need help, we were able to jump in and mobilize and help them. And we did that with your support. And I can't thank you enough for that, for letting us be able to be on the ground help for so many that have been on the front lines and especially marginalized during a time of a public health crisis. Another thing that we did in 2020, in addition to going virtual in every capacity, in every aspect of our operations, was we also provided a lot of virtual programming. And some of that was built around entertainment, such as Black Queer Pride Summer Edition and the various poetry nights and open mics that we have hosted throughout the year. And those really provide an opportunity to spotlight Black queer joy and creativity and voices. And we've also had several that focused more on empowerment and education and building community. So things such as our anti-racism for white folks and community organizing events. It means so much to me that in 2020, so many people came and did such deep introspective work and community work in determining how they can best show up for Black queer people in their everyday lives. And something that I really look forward to in 2021 is how we can continue this reach. Going virtual was something that we did as a matter of health, but it was also something that showed us that we reach beyond Chicagoland, that so many people have been open to listening to Black queer people about how to stand in community with us, stand in solidarity with us, and to do the actual work that is required of being an accomplice for justice for Black queer people. And so I really look forward to continuing that in 2021 and eventually someday together in person. We don't know when that will be, but we know that we have found such a strong footing in 2020, and we're really, really grateful to know where we stand in the community and what we can do. And I look forward to seeing you all here on the computer on Sunday for the final day of Black Queer Pride, as well as we continue to do the work. Thank you again for showing up, and Happy New Year.
Carlin, thank you so much for your service as Leadership Council President and also for your words of greeting and review. There was one thing that Carlin talked about, the Mutual Aid Fund, that I would like Smash, our lead organizer, and Morgan, our Black Queer Caucus Program Coordinator, to give you a little bit more information about.
Glad to be here with you for Black Queer Pride. My name is Smash, and I do some organizing with CARE, which stands for Coalition of Accomplices for Racial Equity. And we organize non-Black folks to come alongside queer Black folks to do the work of justice. And I'm here with Morgan. Morgan, tell the people about yourself.
Hi, I'm Morgan, and I am the Black Queer Caucus Program Coordinator for the Lighthouse Foundation. I'm a Black transgender woman from the South Side of Chicago, and very excited about seeing you all here at Black Queer Pride Winter Edition.
Yep. Excited to be here. So Morgan, this past year was a wild year and an exciting year.
Wild?
Not for you?
Nah, it was a once in a lifetime experience, hopefully.
Well, that's very positive. I don't know if I'm that positive about it.
I said hopefully. I said a once in a lifetime experience, hopefully.
Yeah, let's never do that again. But one really awesome thing is that we were able to give out close to $16,000 in mutual aid this year. So can you tell us a little bit about why you think it's so important that we were able to give mutual aid to Black queer folks?
Well, I believe that in June specifically, when we gave out that mutual aid, it was so necessary because there were an unprecedented number of people out of work. And within that unprecedented number of people out of work were Black and brown people. And within that number was queer Black and brown people who are already disproportionately marginalized, particularly Black transgender people. So us being able to direct those funds to individuals was vital in their, it was vital in maintaining their sanity almost at times, literally and even just emotionally, as the stresses of life probably got very intense. Smash, do you know what were some of those things that people use the funds for?
Yeah, we got some responses from folks about how they used it. So I'm just going to read a couple. One person said, I used the funds to keep alive during this highly uncertain time. They helped
Wow.
me cover my living expenses. As an artist who primarily works in the realm of performance, this to me has been extremely difficult financially. The funds help me to keep going. So that's, I think, a little bit to what you said about not just helping with like the physical necessities of life, right? But just like the emotional support too, was really important to folks, I think.
And the mental stresses. I'll say socially distancing and not being able to share spaces with those who you build community with. It's been draining for a lot of us, particularly again, Black queer people. It's most times we might not find that safety in our homes or with our immediate family. So being separated from your chosen family can have devastating circumstances or devastating responses, I might say. So I
Sure.
definitely think that it was super important with
Yeah.
that work that we did.
Yeah, I think it's important to name that for so many folks, like not being able to have direct access to their communities, it's been such a difficult time. I know for a lot of folks, even having the community of the Lighthouse Foundation, to know those folks have been there and support has just been really important. I'm going to read one more. Someone says, I used the funds to pay a utility bill I couldn't afford and get myself some groceries. It meant and still means a lot to me that I've been able to better take care of myself with this help. Otherwise, I was stretching out single meals or only eating questionable leftovers. Thank you for this fund.
Come on, did y'all hear that? She turned into Jesus because of the fun. She was able to take a loaf of bread and turn it into. I'm just joking.
We're
But
working miracles over here.
basically, yes. And so that's why it is always important to give back, especially to those marginalized and disenfranchised.
Yeah, so we want to thank everyone who gave this year. Like I said, close to $16,000. That's pretty incredible. We were able to help keep a lot of folks afloat. So we are really grateful, and we encourage you to keep giving. We are here for queer Black liberation. That's it. That's all, and that's everything. So thank you for your
Period.
support. Period. The end. Thanks for being with us, and enjoy the rest of Black Queer Pride.
I want to thank Morgan, our Black Queer Caucus program coordinator, and also Smash, our CARE lead organizer, for their deep dive into our mutual aid fund. And now I want to celebrate our member organizations. So many of these member organizations and also our individual members are the reason that our mutual aid fund was so successful. Right now, we have 15 individual CARE members. So these are non-Black accomplices who say we want to fight under the direction of Black queer people for Black queer liberation and our mutual human flourishing. We have about 50 Black Queer Caucus members, and these are the folks who help us make Black Queer Pride happen, Black Women Speaks happen, other monthly signature events, and we are grateful for their advice, for their counsel, for their involvement, and for their wisdom. We also want to thank our 15 member organizations, 12 of which are anti-racist and LGBTQ plus affirming faith communities, and 3 of which are non-for-profits that faithfully serve the LGBTQ plus community. What does it mean to be a member organization? It means that you appoint a liaison to interface between your organization and ours. You make an annual membership commitment, which helps us to grow our capacity so that we can advance the important racial equity work that we are shepherding. And finally, you commit to amplifying our work on social media. I want to thank our friends at the First United Church of Oak Park. I want to thank John, when I sat down with their pastor, for agreeing to join this organization. I want to thank Sandy for showing up month after month for our meetings and participating. I want to celebrate Gather Church, our Reverend Tim Wolf, who was a part of our campaign to bring Officer Thomas Walsh to accountability. I want to thank and I want to celebrate Gilead Chicago, our dear friends, Vince and Rebecca, co-pastors. Gilead has been an organization that supported us from the very beginning because they understood the necessity of more racial equity within the LGBTQ plus community as well as beyond it. And I want to thank Jennifer, the care rep for Gilead, for consistently showing up for Lighthouse Foundation. I want to celebrate Holy Trinity, ELCA, and Craig Mueller, the pastor there. The first time I remember coming into Craig's office and talking with him about the importance of racial equity, I just remember him sitting back and saying, we need to be a part of this. The ELCA already has a national commitment to engage in this anti-racism work, and we think by collaborating and partnering with Lighthouse Foundation, we can make good on the ELCA call to racial equity. Thank you, Craig, for believing in us, standing with us, and supporting us. Holy Trinity ELCA is the only Lakeview church that is a part of Lighthouse Foundation, and we are grateful for your participation. And Carrie, a member of Holy Trinity, is one of our care leaders, and he is on fire for Black queer justice. He's been at the police board with us. He has been at our meetings with us. He's on our leadership council with us. And I'm thankful for the wisdom of Holy Trinity and for their participation. I gotta give a shout out to Rich Havard and the Inclusive Collective. This is a group of college students and young adults that do work at the intersection of faith, sexual orientation, gender identity, and justice. You all sent us a check before we were a sure thing. And I am grateful, Rich, for the ways you have come alongside Lighthouse Foundation and have sojourned faithfully with us. I, of course, want to give a shout out to Lisa from Lighthouse Church UCC. She is a non-Black accomplice that is a member of our faith community, and she shows up for all of Lighthouse Foundation's event. I want to thank you, Lisa, for speaking truth to power and being a real white accomplice, both within Lighthouse Church and also Lighthouse Foundation. Then there's Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church. Beth Brown is the pastor there. I have had the great joy of preaching there a couple times, and this is a congregation whose embrace is warm, and whose reach is wide. I thank you, Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church, for showing up again and again, particularly for the Mutual Aid Fund. And I'm excited to hear from Beth Brown a little bit later in our year-end review. Then there's Pilgrim Congregational Church. There's Jeff, who has been with us, raising his voice at the police board, raising his voice at Center on Halstead for the removal of Officer Thomas Walsh. Thank you. And thank you, Colin Knapp, as you celebrate the beginning of your pastorate at Pilgrim. I am excited that we have partnered with you from the very beginning of your pastorate, and I hope that it continues throughout your pastorate. There's Ravenswood UCC, Jason Coulter. I remember sitting down in a room with him where I said, "White folk, your silence will not save you." And after that conversation, Jason talked to me and he said, "Ravenswood UCC, we're down for the cause. We will join you. I will join you." And I want to thank St. Paul's UCC. This is our home. This is the place in which Lighthouse Church and Lighthouse Foundation was birthed and has grown. And it's not because we are a church or a foundation of Lincoln Parkers. It's because St. Paul's has opened up their property to us and said, "Come in. We aren't going to charge you. We want you to come in and we want you to collaborate with us because we recognize we have tremendous privilege, tremendous opportunity. We've got a gorgeous building that we're reforming, and we want to open it up for you because we think your community is important. And we think your work is invaluable." And St. Paul's, I want to thank you for not only opening up your building, but opening up your hearts. And Matt Fitzgerald, Thank you for the many times that I call you and ask for counsel and wisdom, and you give it freely and extravagantly. And to our final faith community, and to the last organization that has joined us in our first group of 15-member organizations, United Church of Rogers Park, thank you. Lindsay, thank you. After having your child, I think one of the first emails you sent was to me to join this organization and to bring the United Church of Rogers Park across the finish line. I'm grateful to you, and I'm grateful to your congregation for joining in this awesome work. And then to our 3 non-for-profit partners. Howard Brown Health Center. We have done so much with you during 2020. We've had a fee-for-service contract with you to reach out to Black queer people about the realities of COVID and ways that we can protect ourselves. We did a census event that Camille joined in for. We did an election event that Camille, a staff member from Howard Brown, joined in on. Our bond with UHB has been really tight this year, even as we face the realities of systemic racism and also our pandemic. And David, you were one of the first nonprofit CEOs that said, what you're doing is necessary and we will stand with you. And Howard Brown, you are one of our best allies and greatest supporters. Lutheran Children and Family Services, Latasha, LCFS, we have a fee-for-service contract that we are nailing down right now that we will walk out throughout 2021, where we're going to deal with anti-racism. We're going to talk about LGBTQ plus competency and LGBTQ plus liberation and what does it mean to participate in community organizing. There's so many fantastic conversations that LCFS and I will have this year, and I want to give a shout out to Miss Beverly, who drives so much of their racial equity work. And then finally, there's Claude at UCAN. Claude Robinson, I love you. Tammy, I love you. Claude and Tammy, y'all are on speed dial. They review our one-pagers, they review our budget, they give us insight and wisdom about how we can expand our capacity and fulfill our mission. Thank you, UCAN, for standing with us from the very beginning alongside a mutual partner of ours, St. Paul's UCC. So to all of our 15-member organizations, thank you. All of the work that we have been able to accomplish has been because member organizations and individual people stepped up and said, let's work collaboratively for change. And I look forward to welcoming the next 15 individuals to join our care as individual members. I look forward to the next 15 member organizations that expand our member organizations to 30. I look forward to the next 50 Black Queer Caucus members that help us drive this work forward. I want to invite Beth Brown, the pastor of Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church, to give us a reflection about why her congregation joined this organization and how they faithfully showed up for us for the Mutual Aid Fund. Pastor Beth?
Happy Black Queer Pride Winter Edition, everybody. My name is Beth Brown and I'm the pastor at Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church. Just wanted to spend a minute telling you about why our congregation wanted to join in with the Lighthouse Foundation and become one of the original partners. I was thinking about how I first heard that there was a new Black queer congregation in Lincoln Park. And I remember being so surprised by that because Lincoln Park has not been a place where either new congregations have been springing up, but also not a lot of Black, let alone Black queer congregations springing up for sure. Lincoln Park has been an interesting place for our congregation to try to do ministry. And so we were so excited to hear not only that a congregation had been formed, but that they had moved down the block from us. So we got to know Jamie a little bit, got to hear much more about the vision for Lighthouse Foundation, and knew that we really wanted to be a part of it. Part of it is the people always, right? Anytime you partner with somebody, it's about people. and that was part of the draw for us. Part of it was also, though, that it felt like a good next step for us in terms of our own mission and ministry. Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church has long been an advocate for queer folks in the church. And in the past many years, we've also been doing work around white supremacy, Christian supremacy, and trying to become anti-racist and really transforming our institution as well as many others. So to partner with the Lighthouse Foundation in that seemed like the next right step. And again, I can go a little further in terms of saying part of why we wanted to partner with the Lighthouse Foundation was the way that the leadership has been structured. It made so much sense to us that the vision and the strategies would be set by the Black caucus and not by the white folks who wanted to be accomplices. And so we really appreciate the leadership structure, the opportunities for white accomplices, and so many other things about how the Lighthouse Foundation is doing the work. The pandemic has been tough on everybody, and we know specifically it's been so much harder on Black and Brown communities and Indigenous communities. And so we were really grateful to the Lighthouse Foundation for setting up the Mutual Aid Fund. It's hard to find these days a place where you can give money and money is going to go directly to people without having to go through, all these things that people think money should be going to. So we were grateful that we could give money to the Mutual Aid Fund and that money would go directly into people's hands. So that's been a bright spot in the midst of the pandemic. So just wanted to say we're grateful to be partnering and happy to continue this relationship and look forward to the work ahead to equity in the city of Chicago.
Pastor Beth, thank you for all the work that you do and the work that Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church does to advance the mission of Lighthouse Foundation and justice in the world. I want to pause for a moment and thank our funders. These are the foundations on a startup organization half old, one that was talking about racial equity before George Floyd. I thank these foundations for standing with us. First, I got to thank Crossroads Fund. I got to give a shout out to Manny. I'm talking about to Lizette. I'm talking about Jane Comondo. I'm talking about Michael. Crossroads Fund is the truth. Crossroads Fund sent us a check in 2019. Work was starting to take shape. They believed in us when probably no other foundation would. And that's the nature of what Crossroads Fund does. Reported ACT UP. These are the folks that are obstructing anti-immigration. Crossroads Fund is committed to grassroots indigenous justice, and I thank y'all for believing in us. Conant Family Foundation, shout out to Leslie, the ED, and to all members of the board. Thank you for supporting Lighthouse Foundation this year. Your financial contribution through a grant has helped us expand our staffing capacity, which has meant that we have expanded our reach. The Technology Collaborative Fund, which was housed at Crossroads Fund, but it was made up of a bunch of different foundations that contributed to the fund. And it is through that grant that we were able to buy ring lights and laptops and iPads so that we could take all of our in-person programming into virtual programming. The reason you're watching me right now is because the Technology Collaborative gave us a grant. I want to thank the African American Legacy Fund at the Chicago Community Trust. This is an institution that helps to fund a couple of things. One of their main areas of focus, though, is community mental health. And it is because of the Chicago Community Trust support that we have been able to hire Morgan, our Black Queer Caucus program coordinator, and we have had so many events like this one that help to uplift mental health for Black queer folk, particularly during a time when we are dealing with racial upheaval, a global pandemic, isolation because of the winter. When all of these different forces are arrayed against us, our programming is central for Black queer mental health. Thank you, African American Legacy Fund. Thank you, Consuela. Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you, Veronica. Thank you, all of the folks that work at that fund and have supported us. And then finally, I want to thank the Justice Pool Fund, which is housed at Crossroads Fund, but Field Foundation, Polk Brothers, MacArthur, a number of people gave to that fund. And it is through the money that we receive from this fund that we were able to hire additional staff, to start compensating our leaders, to start giving them a stipend, and also to bring aboard SMASH as a paid person to help drive forward our care organizing. We are grateful to Crossroads Fund and all of the entities that came together for the Justice Pool Fund. In terms of corporations, we want to thank Kellogg, K-Pride. They gave us a Pride contribution in 2019, which has helped us grow our capacity and expand our reach. And then I want to thank the individual donors. You all are the folks that have given and given tremendously. You've given in increments of $5 or $10. You've given in increments of $50 or $60. And some of you have given in increments of hundreds of dollars at one time. Thank you. Thank you for seeing the power in this work, the need for this work, and the hope that can come from this work. Every time that you click on QGive and donate, every time that you write a check, you expand the work and the ability of this organization to dream. So I thank our donors, be they corporate, be they foundations, or be they individual donors. It's because of you that we have been able to accomplish so much. I'd like to detail some of what we've been able to accomplish. We currently have 3 stipended Black queer leaders who marshal the work of the Black Queer Caucus. We have 3 care leaders. These are folks who volunteer to do the work of community organizing within our organization. We have 2 full-time staff, me and Hannah, our communications coordinator, and we have 3 part-time staff. We have a director of development, Danny. We have Morgan, our Black Queer Caucus program coordinator, who oversees the stipended BQC leaders and works directly with the larger Black Queer Caucus. And then we have SMASH as a very part-time lead organizer for CARE. We have been able to produce this kind of staffing because of the financial support that we have gotten from our member organizations, individual donors, corporations, and foundations. I just want to say thank you. It's my pleasure to share with you now Lighthouse Foundation's 2021 Signature Racial Justice Initiative, the Black LGBTQ+ Equity Index. Internally, Lighthouse Foundation during this global pandemic has had lots of conversation around how do we expand our mission and what are we called to accomplish in 2021. And we have decided as an organization that we want to move from reactionary confrontation to proactive collaboration. And we think that this equity index affords us and the institutions that we will survey and collaborate with a powerful opportunity to pursue racial equity in meaningful and measurable ways. We want to turn this moment into a real movement for racial justice. We want to create an industry-wide standard for what it means to competently serve Black LGBTQ+ staff, senior staff, board members, and clients. The 5 institutions that we want to survey are AIDS Foundation of Chicago, Chicago House, Center on Halsted, Howard Brown Health Center, and Equality, Illinois. We want to do a 2-part survey. The first part is quantitative in nature. We want to know to what extent do these institutions' staff and senior staff and executive board mirror the clients and communities that they serve. And in the second survey, we want that to be qualitative. We want to know through roundtable discussions and through a survey, what are the experiences of Black queer board members and staff members at these institutions. With the quantitative and the qualitative analysis, we will have not only representation but support. We need more than Black queer faces in high places. We need Black queer folk with an intersectional analysis who are properly supported by their institutions so that they aren't just present, but they are able to move these institutions to more faithfully show up for their Black queer clients and patients. I want to be clear. This is not a calling out. This is a calling in. This is not Lighthouse Foundation standing on the outside pointing into these institutions. No. This is us standing alongside these institutions and saying, we have a mutual foe in institutionalized white supremacy. And how can we come alongside you to fight this foe together? Because I believe, indeed all of Lighthouse Foundation believes, we are stronger together. After we get the survey results, both quantitatively and qualitatively, we will then release a set of recommendations and a report card that's a grading system for how these organizations are doing with racial equity. This is going to be a highly collaborative process. We will have an advisory council that will help to outline this process and also will help to establish some of the questions that we will ask in the survey. We have one confirmed advisory council member, Tracy Bain, but we will have much more in the coming month. We want to have one Black queer representative from each of these 5 institutions so that they can contribute to the survey, so that they can contribute to how this process unfolds. And then secondly, there's going to be a task force that actually codifies the questions for the survey, that codifies the set of recommendations, that codifies the diagnostic tool, the report card. And we will publicly release this information either at the end of the year or the beginning of next. Our aim in this project is to better support Black queer board members and staff members at these 5 institutions so that they in turn can help their institutions better serve their Black queer clients and patients. We think this will have a catalytic impact. Lighthouse Foundation has already reached out to the executive directors and Black queer staff at all of these institutions, and I'm excited to say that every institution that we have talked to so far has expressed an openness and an interest in this project. We have already released an RFP for a consulting firm or a consultant to kind of marshal this project alongside Lighthouse Foundation staff. That RFP deadline is January the 30th, and we hope to have a consultant in to lead this project as early February. On both the advisory council and the task force, we will have public health officials, CDPH, IDPH, will have representatives from philanthropy, and we will also have clients from these institutions. And we will revisit this every year. Every year we will not only revisit these 5 institutions, but we will scale up to include other institutions throughout Chicagoland that serve LGBTQ plus people. Institutions like TPAN, institutions like Night Ministry. So I want to be clear, this is just the beginning. And we chose 5 organizations because we felt like we could conduct this process with them and actually get it done in a timely fashion. But every year, we're going to revisit those 5 institutions and then also scale up to include more. We believe that the Black LGBTQ plus Equity Index has the potential to become a statewide tool, indeed a national tool, for what racial equity looks like in the LGBTQ plus community and how queer institutions can more faithfully and equitably show up for Black queer folk. I am grateful for the grant that we have received from Amped Nonprofit Consulting to help us get this project off the ground. Angela, you are the truth, and I am appreciative of your support. Also, we have directed unrestricted funding that comes from support from our member organizations to make this project happen. And there are so many folks and so many different Black queer-led, Black queer-serving organizations and activists that we have to reach out. We are just announcing this, but there's going to be so many more roundtable conversations and the advisory council and the task force. This is going to be a highly collaborative process. And I'm looking forward to working with these 5 organizations because in 2020, they've all made real and powerful statements about their commitment internally and externally to anti-racism and social justice transformation. Y'all, they're ready to do this work. They are excited to do this work. And I not only am looking forward to this survey and the data and the recommendations that come out of it, but I'm also looking to some shared action between these organizations. How can Lighthouse Foundation and these 5 orgs join together to pursue legislation and business opportunities and community service that will help Black queer folk across Chicagoland? This is a moment pregnant with possibility. And I believe that the Black LGBTQ plus Equity Index is our way to meet the moment. I now want to invite Virginia White, who is our care rep from Root and Branch and also an associate pastor and queer herself, to share more about why Root and Branch decided to join this organization and why they think the Black LGBTQ plus Equity Index is so important. Virginia?
Hi, happy Black Queer Pride weekend, everybody. My name is Virginia, and I serve as the pastor for outreach at Root and Branch Church, one of Lighthouse Foundation's founding partner congregations. We at Root and Branch are so grateful to be a part of what Lighthouse Foundation is doing in Chicago. The truth is, claiming Christianity as one's faith tradition in the United States is frankly a fraught and even at times, at least for me, shameful thing to do. We Christians need to claim and find ways to actively confront the hatred and oppression and closeting of LGBTQ people that occurs within and because of our communities, as well as the ways that Christian teaching and preaching was foundational to colonialism and continues to encourage white nationalism. We must repent for these sins by actively working to repair the damage that has been done, that we have done. But as much as some of us might readily admit that we need to change and try in our own communities through sermons or book clubs, the reality is we can't do it by ourselves. As Martin Luther King rightly noted all those years ago, churches are the most segregated places in the United States. They're places where people go and opt into comfortable relationships with people who look like them, who think like them, who have had lives much like their own. For example, even though Root and Branch Church is led by myself, a white queer woman, and Tim Kim, a straight Asian American man, and we're committed theologically and on paper and our website to anti-racism and celebrating queerness, the fact is we remain demographically and culturally a white heteronormative church. To be anything other than that and Christian in America is unfortunately an uphill and ongoing climb. That's why Lighthouse Foundation's commitment to bringing congregations into the real and everyday work of anti-racist and LGBTQ organizing is so critically important. It's a container for us to do the work of repentance and transformation. This work that's not only necessary for us to be better allies in the fight for justice, which undoubtedly we would need to do, but for us to actually see ourselves and the world as it truly is. To put it simply, congregations need the leadership and perspective of Black queer people and the invitation of places like Lighthouse Foundation if we have any hope of recognizing and living into this kingdom of God that Jesus taught about. And so we're so grateful for the gift that Lighthouse Foundation is offering us by inviting us into your work, our work at the end of the day as partners. It really is in spaces like Lighthouse Foundation where God's liberation, God's love, and God's justice is embodied on this earth. So I'm not surprised that even in this first year of partnership, amid a global pandemic at that our relationship with Lighthouse Foundation has already borne real fruit. For example, I was able to jump right into the action of Lighthouse Foundation last fall 2019, in the campaign to ensure that Walsh Security Company, which is led by an ex-Chicago cop with a history of racial violence, did not gain lucrative security contracts in Boys Town. In fact, in one of my first conversations with Jamie, he went ahead and invited me to prepare comments on behalf of Root and Branch and Lighthouse Foundation to be presented at the Chicago Police Board meeting for a hearing or to demand that Officer Walsh be held accountable for his racist actions. That day was momentous for me personally, as it was the first time that I got to speak at a governmental event on behalf of justice from a faith and pastoral perspective. So I was personally grateful. But as our relationship with Lighthouse grew, the connections that we built went much further than just between me and Jamie or me and Lighthouse Foundation. Our whole congregation had the opportunity to get involved. Right before quarantine, I believe it was last February, for example, we traveled over from Logan Square, where we usually worship, to Lighthouse Church for a Sunday morning worship service. We worshiped differently, we sang differently, we got to experience God in new ways due to this invitation from Lighthouse Church. And after worship, Lighthouse Foundation hosted a little lunch for us where we sat around a circle and learned about injustice that's happening in our community, things that most of us had no idea about before, wouldn't have known about before, and were offered, very helpfully, practical ways for us to get involved. So practical, in fact, that it led to at least a few Root and Branch people joining regularly for the CARE caucus meetings on Saturday mornings. Those ended up being great experiences for us to get into the weeds of political education and action, a real laboratory for us to grow in those skills, grow in our knowledge and effectiveness at being able to advocate for and contribute to the work to build the sort of world that we want to see. And so finally, another way that our entire congregation really benefited from this partnership already is through the wonderful and expert organizing training led by Rev Smash. She came on rather short notice this summer via Zoom and offered a personally tailored anti-racism workshop for our congregation. The workshop was so memorable in that Smash very directly and pointedly, but patiently and openly invited us into conversations about white supremacy in our own lives, our own psyches, and frankly, our own congregation that we needed to have, and gave us language that has been foundational to us as we continue conversations about our church and how we can continue and deepen our own commitment to being actively anti-racist as a community. And so I am so excited for our continued partnership with Lighthouse Foundation in 2021. Clearly, it need not even be said, but I will say it anyway. Amid the sickening events of last week, the urgency around addressing and holding white privilege and supremacy in all of its forms accountable is beyond deniability. And more than that, there's no doubt that this includes LGBT communities and service providers and nonprofits. We in the queer community need to know that our organizations are not exempt from racial bias and violence. And so it is time for the real and nitty-gritty, not always headline-making work of anti-racism within these places. and that it become a priority for all of us. And so I'm so excited to see how this equity index makes real progress and change in 2021, 2022, the years to come. It's such a powerful, intersectional, and well-researched tool for us to use, and I think it will just make leaps and bounds in the direction of justice. Can't wait to see where this partnership takes us in 2021. I am so grateful to be a part of it. Thank you all, and let's get at it this year.
Thank you, Virginia, and thank you, Root and Branch, for the many ways that you faithfully have shown up in radical solidarity with Lighthouse Foundation. This is our year in review, and this is our 2021 platform and vision statement. Thank you to everyone that has helped make this first year and a half of Lighthouse Foundation such a success. And here's to a phenomenal and successful 2021.